Let's ease into this conversation together, perhaps while you're relaxing with your evening tea or just letting the day settle around you, and talk about something that begins to feel quite familiar for so many of us once we reach our 60s and 70s. You might catch yourself standing in the hallway wondering why you walked there in the first place, or during a chat with your neighbor the name of that old movie you both loved just won't come, even though you can picture the scenes perfectly. Or some mornings you wake up and your mind feels heavy and slow, as if every thought has to push through a thick layer, turning even simple things like deciding what to eat for breakfast or following a television program into tasks that take more mental energy than they used to. It's the kind of thing that makes you think quietly to yourself, this must be what getting older does to a person, just the usual way the mind eases back a little with time. But from more than 20 years of sitting with people in their later decades, really listening to what they're experiencing day after day, and looking closely at what the research truly says about keeping the mind clear and steady, I can tell you honestly that a great many of these changes aren't fixed by the calendar alone. So often they trace straight back to sleep, how well the nights are actually restoring and supporting the brain, or how much they're quietly falling short without anyone quite seeing the connection. And the heart of my work has been these kinds of honest, one-on-one conversations with seniors, people coming in concerned because their memory doesn't feel as trustworthy as it used to, because small irritations now spark quicker reactions than before, or because there's this persistent mental cloudiness that makes even pleasant daily moments feel like they require extra concentration. Almost every person I speak with arrives already convinced this is simply the unavoidable slowdown that comes with more years, something inevitable that everyone faces eventually. But as we begin talking about their daily patterns, especially what happens after the lights go out and the house grows quiet, a different and often much more hopeful picture usually starts to emerge. The main thing quietly wearing down mental sharpness and emotional balance isn't typically too much sugar in the diet, endless worry, or family genes by themselves. Far more often, it's the subtle ways sleep habits have drifted over the months and years, small, unnoticed shifts that accumulate until thoughts move more slowly, details become harder to hold on to, and moods feel less even and predictable. The encouraging truth, the part that brings genuine relief to so many, is that those same habits can almost always be gently guided back into better alignment with changes that are straightforward, practical, and don't demand anything complicated, expensive, or disruptive. Sleep serves purposes that reach much deeper than simply closing your eyes for a certain number of hours so your body isn't heavy and tired when morning arrives. In the deeper, quieter layers, the slow-wave sleep that draws you down into a heavy, peaceful rest, and the REM sleep where dreams come and go, your brain becomes an active nighttime repair crew. It carefully flushes out the waste products that build up from all the mental activity of the day. The thinking, remembering, deciding, planning, and feeling, keeping the brain's inner environment clean and uncluttered so signals can travel quickly and clearly. It strengthens the delicate connections between brain cells that store and link memories, ensuring that recent experiences, a conversation with a neighbor, where you left your wallet, what your grandson told you on the phone, stay put and don't fade as rapidly. It mends tiny wear and tear in those neural pathways, so thoughts flow fast and accurately without stumbling or slowing. And it gently processes the emotional tones of the day, any little tensions, happy moments, or quiet concerns, helping sort them out so you wake up with a more balanced inner state, rather than carrying forward yesterday's leftover feelings. When nights become fragmented with repeated awakenings or don't provide enough time in these deeper stages, this essential overnight maintenance gets cut short or left incomplete. That's when the effects appear first, in everyday moments. Forming complete thoughts requires noticeably more effort. Familiar names or details prove harder to retrieve. Attention drifts off without much warning, and moods can feel uneven, overly sensitive, or strangely subdued even on calm days. The National Institute on Aging has reliable figures showing that nearly half of adults over 65 experience some form of ongoing sleep difficulty. Yet more than 60% of those same people consider their sleep problems either not serious or simply a normal part of aging. They often miss how those restless or shallow nights gradually wear away at mental quickness and emotional steadiness over months and years. The process unfolds without any dramatic warnings, no sharp pain, no sudden crisis, just a slow, quiet dimming, of how sharp and dependable the mind feels. Having reviewed extensive research and listened to hundreds of first-hand accounts from patients, one observation stands out consistently. Among all the factors that influence how well a senior's brain continues to function, sleep habits frequently prove to be the single most powerful and changeable element. It's seldom mainly about consuming too many sweets, enduring non-stop pressure, or carrying particular genes alone. Far more commonly, it's the ordinary routines around bedtime, how we settle in for the night, and what actually happens during those hours that carry the greatest weight. So let's walk through this together in a calm, unhurried way, as though we're sitting here with plenty of time and no pressure at all. I'll describe the 5 most common sleep habits that quietly undermine brain performance for people in their later years, then explain practical, research-supported adjustments that can help turn things around. These ideas come directly from careful work done at Harvard, Stanford, the University of Colorado, Johns Hopkins, the University of Michigan, and the National Institute on Aging. They're realistic steps that have already brought clearer thinking, calmer feelings, and stronger focus to many seniors just like you. Nothing extreme or difficult. If it feels right, type your age in the comments when you're ready. I appreciate knowing who's here listening and who might be recognizing some of their own nights and days. One of the most frequent patterns begins with bedtime that shifts from night to night. Perhaps one evening, you're tired after visiting family, so you retire early. The next night, a favorite program keeps you up longer, and weekends follow their own schedule. This kind of variability unsettles your body's internal daily clock, the circadian rhythm that coordinates when you're most alert, when memory works best, when concentration holds steady, and when emotions remain balanced. As people move into their 60s and 70s, this clock becomes somewhat less flexible, making consistent daily signals even more essential to keep everything running smoothly. At the center of that clock sits a small cluster of brain cells called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master timer that depends heavily on reliable cues, particularly the same wake-up time and bedtime each day, to maintain accurate alignment. When bedtime fluctuates significantly, the brain has difficulty scheduling complete periods of deep non-REM sleep, the stage that's crucial for converting short-term experiences into long-term memories you can access later. Researchers at the University of Colorado followed 300 adults over 8 years and found that inconsistent sleep timing was associated with roughly 30% faster decline in episodic memory, the ability to recall specific events, conversations, or experiences, even when total sleep hours appeared sufficient. In other words, 7 or 8 hours in bed does not provide full protection if the schedule keeps changing. Sleep's true restorative power relies on predictability. The brain performs at its best when it can rely on deep recovery occurring within roughly the same nightly window. If you've ever had the frustrating experience of walking into a room and instantly forgetting why you're there, or starting to speak and having the rest of the sentence disappear midway, feel free to add foggy to your comment. We're very likely describing the same thing many others go through regularly. Another pattern that develops quietly is remaining in bed while fully awake for extended periods. 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes longer. It feels logical to stay there. You're already comfortable. The lights are low, so sleep should arrive if you just wait. But the brain learns associations rapidly through repetition. Spending prolonged time awake in that environment begins teaching it to link the bed with alertness, thinking things over, or feeling restless rather than the automatic slide into peaceful sleep. Over time, this learned connection weakens the bed's power as a cue for relaxation, resulting in overall lighter sleep that fragments more often with numerous brief awakenings scattered through the night. Picture your bed as a peaceful, private haven intended only for rest. When wakefulness lingers there, it gradually becomes a place where mental activity continues instead of quieting. Johns Hopkins researchers tracked 250 adults aged 65 and older and found that those who regularly stayed awake for long stretches in bed experienced 42% more nighttime awakenings and significantly higher morning anxiety scores. That subtle increase in edginess often shows up as quicker irritation over small inconveniences, greater difficulty staying absorbed in a book or conversation, or a general sense that mental steadiness has slipped, even for people who never previously dealt with noticeable anxiety. Going to bed unusually early, often at 7 or 8 in the evening, surprises many as a problem. It seems like a sensible choice. More time in bed should mean more recovery. but the body generates natural sleep pressure through a sufficient stretch of wakefulness and gentle activity during daylight hours. When bedtime arrives too soon after rising, that necessary buildup remains incomplete. So even though someone spends 9 or 10 hours in bed, the actual duration in deep slow-wave sleep and dreaming REM shortens considerably. Slow-wave sleep clears metabolic waste from brain tissue and firmly establishes factual knowledge and procedural skills in memory, while REM sleep processes emotions and supports flexible thinking. Without adequate preceding wake time, neither phase reaches its full length or intensity. The University of Michigan examined older adults who went to bed early and found their REM cycles were approximately 20% shorter than expected, despite the long total time in bed. This pattern can closely resemble early signs of cognitive decline: hesitation in finding common words, slower mental processing, occasional moments of confusion. But because the cause is timing rather than irreversible damage, correcting the schedule often restores a significant portion of previous function. The brain retains its inherent capacity. What it needs is the appropriate framework to express that capacity fully. Exposure to even modest amounts of light during nighttime hours often surprises people as a significant disruptor. This might come from a hallway fixture left on for safety, the faint glow of an alarm clock, a brief check of a phone when waking briefly, or light filtering under a door from a television in another room. Even low levels of light communicate to the brain that full darkness hasn't arrived, suppressing melatonin, the hormone that facilitates smooth sleep onset, sustains deeper stages, and provides protective benefits to nerve cells against everyday oxidative stress. Reduced melatonin leads to lighter, less consolidated sleep, slower clearance of brain waste, and weaker memory formation. Stanford University scientists studied adults 65 and older and discovered that even dim nighttime illumination decreased melatonin production by about 50%, resulting in shallower rest and measurably poorer performance on memory tasks the next day. Most individuals tend to minimize this factor because the brain doesn't protest immediately. The decline accumulates gradually, making it natural to attribute changes to age rather than an environmental element that can be modified. Long-term reliance on sleep medications night after night merits careful consideration. These can offer helpful support during short periods of high stress or travel, but when used every evening for 6 months or longer, particularly benzodiazepines, they frequently reduce the proportion of time spent in deep slow-wave sleep and REM sleep. Those specific stages represent the periods of most effective brain detoxification, memory reinforcement, and emotional recalibration. A significant study published in JAMA Neurology followed seniors using benzodiazepines nightly over extended durations and reported a 23% reduction in slow-wave sleep. This particular stage holds special importance because it facilitates the removal of proteins like beta-amyloid, which, if allowed to accumulate unchecked, contribute to progressive cognitive challenges. Someone may feel they've slept adequately because they remained asleep for a solid block of hours, yet the brain has missed portions of its critical nightly repair agenda, resulting in gradual effects on mental clarity, mood stability, and reliable recall. The truly encouraging reality is that none of these patterns must lead to permanent or irreversible consequences. Scientific understanding of brain function in later life emphasizes remarkable resilience, the continuing ability to regain and maintain performance when conditions become more favorable. Even well into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, improvements in sleep support translate into meaningful, observable gains in daily mental life. The appropriate response is not fear or sweeping change, but gentle awareness paired with small, considerate modifications that better align routines with natural biology. To make this real, let me share 2 accounts from people I've worked with closely. Margaret came to see me at age 72. She looked tired and spoke in a soft, hesitant voice as she explained how frightened she felt. "I really believe my mind is starting to go," she said. She'd find herself standing in doorways, unable to recall what brought her there, struggled to find common words during phone conversations with her daughter, and notice a growing anxiety that made her question her own abilities in ways she never had before. She typically spent about 8 hours in bed, but bedtime varied considerably, sometimes around 9 o'clock, other nights closer to 11, And she often remained awake for nearly an hour once there, her mind circling through concerns about family, her health, or upcoming tasks. Together we introduced the REST protocol, a structured yet entirely manageable set of steps I'll explain fully soon. Margaret committed to it with quiet determination. When she returned after 6 weeks, the difference in her expression and energy was clear. She reported morning alertness rising from roughly 40% to around 80% of what felt normal. Nighttime awakenings decreased from 4 or 5 to 1 or 2 at most. The creeping anxiety eased noticeably, replaced by returning confidence. While memory still had occasional minor lapses, she described the sensation as one of relief. Her brain had finally received the restorative conditions it needed. During one follow-up, she looked at me and said with a small smile, "I was convinced this was permanent loss. It turns out my brain was simply exhausted because the nights hadn't been providing the support it needed to recover." Harold, at 68, presented a related but different picture. He took pride in his routine of going to bed at 7 every evening to ensure plenty of rest. Unfortunately, he regularly woke around 3 and couldn't return to sleep, lying there growing increasingly frustrated. Memory testing revealed mild but detectable weakening in short-term retention. He'd used a low-dose sleep medication for years to help initiate rest. We began by establishing an unchanging wake-up time regardless of how fragmented the previous night had been, then gradually delayed bedtime while minimizing evening light exposure and, under his doctor's guidance, reducing reliance on the medication. His sleep-tracking device showed deep sleep increasing by 35% within 8 weeks. Repeated word recall assessments improved from 15 correct out of 20 to 19 out of 20. The persistent morning mental cloudiness vanished, and his mood remained noticeably more consistent from morning through evening. In a later conversation, Harold reflected that the protocol had effectively reset his natural sleep-wake cycle, finally allowing his brain to complete the restorative processes that had been consistently interrupted for years. Experiences like those of Margaret and Harold occur with encouraging frequency. Across the years, I've witnessed hundreds of older adults achieve similar, measurable progress: sharper cognitive function, more stable emotional responses, steadier daily energy, once sleep patterns received deliberate, consistent attention. The approach that reliably produces these outcomes is what I call the REST protocol, organized around 4 interconnected principles: rhythm through fixed timing, education concerning the cultivation of natural sleep pressure, stimulus control to reinforce the association between bed and sleep, and timing to identify the most suitable bedtime window. Rhythm starts with establishing a fixed wake-up time. Choose one realistic hour that works with your lifestyle, perhaps 7 o'clock or 7:30, and get up at that exact time every morning, including weekends and even following nights of poor rest. This unwavering daily signal powerfully strengthens the internal circadian clock, builds stronger sleep drive as the day progresses, and promotes fuller expression of deep restorative sleep when night returns. Research from Harvard demonstrated that seniors maintaining consistent wake times experienced a 30% improvement in deep sleep quantity within only 2 weeks. The initial mornings after inadequate sleep may feel difficult, but most people notice the body adapts quickly, rewarding the consistency with progressively better and more reliable nights. Education in this context involves intentionally supporting the natural development of sleep pressure. Restrict daytime naps to 20 minutes maximum and ensure they conclude well before 3 o'clock in the afternoon so they don't diminish nighttime sleep need. Immediately upon waking, seek bright light exposure for 15 to 20 minutes. Natural morning sunlight provides the strongest signal. When weather or season prevents outdoor time, position yourself near a bright therapeutic lamp or turn on multiple indoor overhead lights. Pair this with gentle physical activity, perhaps a slow walk outside or around the home, some easy seated stretches, or light tasks like watering plants or preparing a simple breakfast. These combined elements sustain higher daytime alertness, which then promotes deeper, more continuous nighttime sleep, granting the brain extended opportunity to complete its vital maintenance. Stimulus control directly addresses prolonged wakefulness in bed. The guideline is clear. If you've been lying down for 20 to 30 minutes or longer without falling asleep or after awakening during the night, rise calmly. Maintain extremely low lighting, perhaps a small nightlight with a warm amber tone if movement requires it, and relocate to another room or chair. Engage in something deliberately dull and non-stimulating. Slowly turn pages of an old catalog without reading intently. Fold a small pile of laundry methodically. Listen quietly to soft instrumental music at low volume, or simply sit practicing slow, even breathing. Importantly, steer clear of anything activating. No electronic screens, no news or television, no gripping books, no mental list-making or problem-solving. Return to bed only when unmistakable sleepiness returns naturally. This practice systematically rebuilds the brain's recognition of bed as the place for sleep while dissolving the association with frustration or mental busyness. Johns Hopkins researchers documented that seniors practicing stimulus control reduced average nighttime awakenings by 42% over 6 weeks, often accompanied by a calmer overall relationship with sleep difficulties. Timing centers on targeting an optimal bedtime window for most older adults, usually between 9:30 and 10:30 at night. This interval typically synchronizes well with the body's natural evening melatonin rise and provides sufficient total hours for several complete sleep cycles, ensuring adequate time in both deep slow wave and REM stages. Should your present bedtime differ significantly, implement gradual adjustments, moving the hour by approximately 15 minutes later every 3 or 4 nights until reaching the preferred range. Proceeding slowly helps prevent temporary rebound insomnia or excessive daytime fatigue. Findings from the University of Michigan indicated that seniors who adjusted toward this optimized timing window demonstrated 15 to 20% improvement on standardized cognitive assessments after 4 weeks, largely attributable to lengthened deep and REM durations that enhanced memory storage and emotional equilibrium. To strengthen the effectiveness of these core components, actively minimize exposure to artificial light once evening arrives. Use warm, low-intensity bulbs in lamps and hallways, cover or dim any glowing clocks or device screens, and establish a routine that avoids phones, tablets, or television in the hour before bed. Safeguarding melatonin levels facilitates smoother sleep initiation and enables more thorough execution of the brain's protective and reparative functions overnight. Should any medications, whether intended for sleep or prescribed for other conditions, appear to influence rest quality, discuss the matter openly with your prescribing physician to explore whether minor modifications might better complement natural sleep processes. When the rest protocol is followed consistently, positive developments typically unfold in a natural, progressive sequence that feels sustainable and authentic. During the initial week, many notice sleep beginning to consolidate. Interruptions decrease, depth increases modestly, and mornings arrive with a perceptible reduction in heaviness or sluggishness. In the second week, falling asleep often happens more easily, daytime vitality receives a gentle lift, and any background tension, irritability, or subdued mood starts to ease. By weeks 3 and 4, more noticeable improvements become evident. Recent events or conversations return to mind more readily. Attention sustains itself longer during reading, discussions, or hobbies, and emotions remain steadier even amid ordinary daily demands. After the 1-month point and continuing forward, deep slow wave and REM sleep establish reliable patterns, reliance on compensatory daytime naps drops away markedly, and overall mental sharpness becomes more consistent and familiar. The entire progression resembles a slow, careful reboot of the brain's internal daily rhythms. Each successive day contributes incremental strength until the cumulative result emerges as substantially clearer, steadier, and more vibrant daily experience. To be completely straightforward, the rest protocol is not presented as a treatment or cure for conditions like dementia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, or other progressive neurological disorders. It focuses specifically on optimizing sleep to provide the strongest possible support for existing brain function. Never discontinue or adjust prescribed medications independently. Always consult your physician first. Individuals managing diagnosed conditions including sleep apnea, significant cardiovascular issues, clinical depression, or similar health concerns should obtain medical clearance before adopting substantial routine modifications. The most prudent path begins modestly. First, establish and maintain the fixed wake-up time for 1 to 2 weeks, then gradually reposition bedtime, weave in morning bright light and movement, and introduce stimulus control once the initial elements feel secure. Quaintly bring back more clarity and lightness than seems possible when you first begin.